He called me to the stage, smiled for the cameras, and fired me in front of 300 people. I didn't say a word, just straightened my tie and reached for the microphone. "Before I go," I said, calm as ever, "let me tell you a fun little story about January 17th's expense reports." The room went quiet. Let me back up. They told me it was formal. Black tie, hotel ballroom, CEO flying in. "Bring your A-game," Grant said, flashing that politician grin he'd perfected over 6 months as division head. I'd worked there 14 years. No write-ups, no skipped deadlines, no scandals, never missed a budget meeting, a vendor call, or a system patch. Hell, I'd written half the operating protocols they were still using. But that didn't stop them. They sat me at table 9, far left side, half view of the stage, near the server's entrance. Like a ghost at my own funeral. People nodded. Small talk. "Ethan, long time. Hey, weren't you on the System Security Task Force? I thought you were getting the award for ops continuity." I just smiled. I'm just here to clap. When Grant took the mic around 8:30, I knew. He made a speech about change, bold new directions, and recognizing those who've kept this company strong. Then he said my name. I stood up slow, straightened my jacket, buttoned it with care. No heart rate spike, no sweat. I'd been ready. Applause echoed as I crossed the floor. I passed the new hire who'd been shadowing me all week. She wouldn't look me in the eye. Grant shook my hand, still smiling. "Ethan's been with us longer than most of the current board," he said. "We owe a lot to people like him. Backbone guys. Always there, always working." People clapped again, politely. Then he said it. "And tonight," he said, turning just slightly to face me, "we want to thank Ethan for his service and formally announce that his position is being eliminated." Laughter died fast. "We're streamlining," he added quickly. "New structures, new leadership." I nodded once. The lights were hot, the silence sharp. Then I stepped forward, took the mic from his hand, gently, and smiled at the crowd. "Appreciate that, Grant," I said. My voice didn't crack. "And before I go, just a fun little story about January 17th's expense reports." Grant froze. One person in the crowd laughed, the kind of nervous laugh people make when they're not sure if it's a joke. I didn't continue, not yet. I let the sentence hang like a wire across the room. Then I stepped back, handed the mic to the MC, walked off the stage. I dropped a small black flash drive on the legal counsel's table as I passed. Didn't look back. Outside, the night was cold. I walked to my car in silence. Let them start guessing. I wasn't the kind of guy who took selfies at work. No trophy wall, no LinkedIn grindset posts. Just head down, results in, systems running, no fires. I started at Hexridge Global in 2009. Back then, the office still ran Windows XP. We used whiteboards for weekly targets, and nobody had heard of Slack. I was the guy who stayed late to switch out server racks, who rebuilt the inventory flow tracker from scratch, twice, who knew where the digital skeletons were buried, because I was the one who dug the graves when things went wrong. My name never made it into press releases, but I was in every rollout, every clean audit, every emergency meeting where leadership needed someone to quietly fix this before Monday. I didn't mind, not for the first 5 years. In 2014, we hit our first real crisis. Someone from finance got cute with vendor invoices. Overbilled, backdated, buried under fake line items. 6 figures of rot. Grant, back when he was just a rising director, called me in. He asked, "Can you make this go away?" I asked, "Do you want it fixed or buried?" He said, "Both." I didn't report it. I built a firewall, rewrote the policy stack, flagged anomalies that legal never bothered to look at again. I covered it. For him. A week later, he gave me a $25 Starbucks card and said, "Appreciate you, man. We need more soldiers like you." I bought one coffee and left the card in a drawer. It's still there. They promoted him in 2016. Vice President of Operations, corner office, travel perks, an assistant named Devin who called everyone bro. They didn't promote me. I wasn't angry, just noted the pattern. When a back-end vendor failed our data compliance test in 2017, I rewrote the contract language myself. Legal rubber stamped it. Saved the company $200,000 in potential fines. They gave the credit to senior leadership oversight. That meant Grant. In 2018, I interviewed for a manager role. I had the numbers. I had the team. They said I was too essential in the trenches. Said I was irreplaceable at the operational level, which meant don't move. We need someone to take the hits. So I stayed, kept building, kept catching the things no one else noticed. My wife started calling me the invisible man. She meant it kindly. She saw what I was doing. How I skipped vacation 3 years in a row so I could be on call for post-Q4. I missed our daughter's first piano recital, and her second, and her third. In 2020, during the pandemic panic, I was the one who designed our remote access workaround. We were back up in 36 hours. No headline, no bonus. Just a Slack emoji from Grant that said, "That was my trophy." They forgot me on the team slide during the next investor call. My assistant noticed. She was angry on my behalf. I just said, "It happens." When the reorg started in mid-2022, I smelled it coming. New hires with vague titles. Strategic integration analysts. Performance architecture officers. They wore nicer shoes and couldn't read a ledger. One asked me what an ERP was. I just smiled and pointed at the nearest exit. By fall, I was being looped out of meetings I created. They shifted my desk to the back wall, said it was temporary. Renovations. Feng shui. One day, I came in and my name wasn't on the whiteboard anymore. Devin just said, "Oh, must have been an oversight. I'll fix it." He never did. The final straw came wrapped in kindness. December. A box on my desk. Gold ribbon. Typed card. "Thank you for your continued commitment to operational excellence." Inside was a gift card to a restaurant my wife and I used to love, until they closed it in 2019. It wasn't a gift, it was a signal. So I started collecting emails, meeting notes, back-end access logs, expense reports with curious line items, receipts that didn't match vendor tags. One entry, infrastructure enhancements, $12,580. Vendor, get it quick. Date, January 17th, 1:12 a.m. I didn't remember that project because it didn't exist. I traced the vendor's registration. It led to a holding account. The account belonged to a cousin of Devin's. Same address as a townhouse in Silver Lake, registered in 2021. That's when I stopped hoping this was just carelessness. I built a folder, named it Echo. Inside, PDFs, screenshots, IP logs, approvals with forged timestamps. I backed it up to a flash drive, made 2 copies, gave one to my wife, told her to hold it until I said otherwise. She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Are you okay?" I told her, "I'm just tired." She kissed my forehead. That's when I realized I wasn't mad anymore, just ready. They told me to wear a suit to the banquet, said it would be a big night. They weren't wrong. It didn't happen all at once. That's the trick. They don't stab you in the back in broad daylight. They peel you away, one thread at a time. The first thread came with a calendar update, weekly leadership sync. I'd been on it since 2014. Suddenly, my name wasn't there. I figured it was a mistake, forwarded the invite to myself, logged in that Monday, got kicked out 3 minutes in. Access denied, participant not recognized. I emailed Devin. No reply. 2 days later, I noticed the finance report folder had a new permissions lock. I'd built that folder. Now I couldn't open it. At first, I tried to justify it. Maybe a systems update. Maybe they were segmenting teams for efficiency. Maybe I was overthinking it. Then they moved my desk. No email, no notice. Just came in one morning to find my chair missing, monitors boxed up, and a sticky note taped to the empty wall. Facilities shift. Temporary. They put me in the back corner of floor 3, near the HVAC hum. No windows. Number 1 else around, like a machine part stored for future use. The new guy, Daniel, took my old spot. He was 29, came from a startup, spoke in acronyms and buzzwords, had a habit of finishing sentences with, "if that makes sense." It didn't, but no one corrected him. He started shadowing my projects, not helping, just watching, just building redundancy, Grant said when I asked, "making sure your knowledge is scalable." He smiled like a priest giving bad news. Then came the survey. HR emailed it out. Internal role relevancy assessment. Anonymous, they said. One section. Which roles do you consider obsolete in our new model? Another. Do you believe legacy employees hinder innovation? I didn't fill it out. The next week, a new HR coordinator scheduled a routine career path discussion with me. Her name was Kyra, fresh out of grad school. She asked what I saw myself doing long term. I said, what I've always done, keep things running. She smiled like I'd said the wrong answer. On March 3rd, I got a gift card in the mail. Same restaurant as before, same gold ribbon, this time with a handwritten note. Appreciate your patience during this exciting transition. GW, the same restaurant, still closed. I threw the card in the trash, kept the envelope. Then I made a mistake. I asked a question. I noticed an approval signature on a system upgrade purchase order, dated February 18th. It had my name on it, but I hadn't approved anything that week. In fact, I'd been out sick. Fever, vertigo, 3 days off. I checked the logs. The IP address didn't match mine. It matched Devin's office. I took a screenshot, labeled it Forgery 1. Then I sent a polite email to procurement. Subject line, clarification on PO 8412. No reply. Next day, Grant showed up at my desk. First time in weeks. He leaned against the cubicle wall, arms folded, too casual. "Hey, Ethan, just wanted to check in. Everything good?" I said, "All good." He nodded, then dropped the smile. "Just be careful poking around finance logs, all right? We've got a new compliance officer starting next quarter, and I don't want to create unnecessary noise." He clapped my shoulder, walked off. That was the moment. Not the forgery, not the calendar lockouts. That sentence. "I don't want to create unnecessary noise." That's when I knew I was already dead in their system. They weren't waiting to fire me. They were waiting to erase me quietly. So I stopped emailing, stopped asking questions, stopped showing reactions. I did the job, hit every deadline, smiled when spoken to, let Daniel sit in on every meeting, and in the background, I kept building my file. They'd picked the wrong guy to kill quietly. I started calling it the Echo folder. The sound of things they thought would fade. Inside it, a PDF of a vendor contract with a false signature, an invoice from Get 8 Quick Consulting dated January 17th, 12:02 a.m., reimbursement logs that didn't match budget allocations, a spreadsheet of every access attempt to my profile by Grant and Devon's terminals. Then, I found the kicker. A message accidentally forwarded to me by one of the junior finance analysts. Subject, pre-termination compliance list. Buried halfway down, remove Ethan's access by March 25th. Formal stage opportunity during ops banquet. It was dated 2 weeks ago. They'd already planned the execution, just hadn't told the body it was dead yet. I printed it, didn't forward it, didn't upload it, printed it, folded it once, put it in my wallet. That night I sat at the kitchen table with Claire. She didn't ask what I was doing, just slid a mug of coffee across the table and said, "It's almost over, isn't it?" I nodded. She reached into her purse, pulled out the flash drive I gave her months ago and slid it back to me. "Time to use it?" "Almost." The next morning, I opened my wardrobe, brushed off the navy suit, pressed the lapels, checked the cuffs. Then I emailed Grant, "Looking forward to the banquet. Thanks for including me." They started erasing me 6 weeks before the banquet. Not with a pink slip, not with a confrontation. They used silence. The first thing I noticed was the calendar, the weekly leadership huddle I'd been on since 2015. Gone. No invite, no recording, no mention. I checked my permissions. Revoked. I asked Devon. He said, "Oh, probably a sync issue." It wasn't. Then came the hallway glances. Not disrespectful, not rude, just a little too polite. Like people had been told not to ask questions. I wasn't paranoid. I was observant. That's what got me into this business in the first place. Grant stopped replying to my check-ins. 3 weeks passed. No response to my expense log clarifications. No follow-up on the ops migration status. I was still doing the work. They just stopped acknowledging it, like I was a scheduled shutdown waiting to happen. Then they moved my desk. I came in on a Tuesday, and my entire station had been relocated 2 floors down. Due to facilities improvements, they gave me a folding table near the emergency stairwell. No whiteboard, no plug-in monitor, just a chair, a laptop, and an artificial plant. I didn't complain. I took out my coffee mug, opened my task queue, and started another day. That Friday, someone new showed up in my old seat. Her name was Maya, fresh out of grad school. She smiled like she'd been told something. When she asked where the Q3 protocol dashboards lived, I told her they didn't exist. I'd written those reports manually for 5 years. She blinked, said, "Oh, cool." The next gift was a card, black envelope, silver trim. Inside was a $100 gift card to a steakhouse that shut down during the pandemic. No message, just the logo and a folded note. "Thank you for being part of this transition." I put the card in the shredder, filed the note. A few days later, I received a calendar invite from HR. Transition mapping session with Kira M. Kira was young, blonde, nervous. She greeted me like I was already gone. "We're just doing career pathing for some of our more tenured team members," she said. I asked, "Is this about reorganization?" She smiled and said, "We're looking forward." The nail came from a missed call. Procurement rang me about an urgent discrepancy. One of the vendor receipts logged under my approval ID didn't match my signature, PO-00641, dated February 8th, 2:11 a.m. I had the flu that week. Logged off all 3 days, didn't even check email. I asked them to forward the file. When it came through, I saw the problem instantly. The approval was forged. The digital signature matched mine, but the IP address logged with it didn't. It came from Devon's terminal. I didn't say anything, didn't forward the proof, didn't file a ticket. I made a new folder on my desktop, Echo, and I started collecting. 2 more approvals with Go sign-offs appeared by the end of the week. One for an external advisory service, another for cloud performance enhancement. Combined total, $18,000. Same vendor tag, Get It Quick. A shell, obviously. I checked its business license. It was registered to a residential duplex in Silver Lake, California, owned by someone named Brenner Wallace, Grant's cousin. That was when I understood. They weren't replacing me. They were laundering something, and I was the cutout. I printed the receipts, logged the access times, saved 3 backups, one to my encrypted drive, one to a secure cloud vault, and one on a flash drive I taped under my desk. Then I sat quietly for another week while Devin led a meeting on scalable architecture using a diagram I built last summer. No one mentioned my name. That was the point. The final confirmation came in an email chain I was never supposed to see. Someone from legal accidentally copied me into a forward. Subject line, RE, suggested structure for April termination. My name was 3rd on the list. Notes beside it. Can be managed publicly. Optics controllable. Legacy employee. Minimal disruption. Stage opportunity at banquet. Pending Grant's intro remarks. I read it twice. Saved it. Folded it into an envelope. Slipped it into my wallet. That night, my wife poured me a whiskey without asking. She didn't say anything until I set the envelope on the table. Then she said, "You knew this was coming." I nodded. "They're not just cutting me loose. They're using me." What now? Now I let them. Next morning, I ironed my suit, polished my shoes, sent one email. Subject, "Looking forward to the banquet. Let me know if I'll need to speak." Grant replied 6 minutes later. "Absolutely. Appreciate your partnership, Ethan." They thought I was walking into a trap. I was setting the stage. They thought I was winding down. What I was doing was winding the noose. Most people lash out when they're cornered. Rage. Threats. Exit emails with subject lines like, "Let me be clear." I didn't. I kept my head down. Let them finish building their stage. All I did was tighten a few knots. The first was a folder. Not digital. They could trace that. I printed everything. Every invoice with a fake vendor tag. Every ghost reimbursement. Every midnight approval I never gave. I built a physical binder. Indexed. Chronological. Every entry cross-checked with IP logs and terminal IDs. I didn't label it evidence. I labeled it continuity archive, just in case someone opened it too early. The second knot was legal. I reached out to a friend named Alex. We'd worked together years ago, back when his firm was just 3 guys in a glass office over a taco joint. Now they had a building with their name on it. I asked him one question. If a company uses your name to approve illegal transactions, but you have proof, what's the fastest way to sink them? He didn't laugh. He just said, "Do you want this quiet or loud?" "Loud," I said. "Then wait until they smile." I gave him the binder. He made 3 more. One went to a senior partner at his firm. One was hand-delivered to the state auditor's office with a formal complaint. The third was locked in a fireproof box and shipped to myself. Certified mail. Still sealed, postmarked, and untouched. Time-stamped truth. Then I built the final thing. A simple webpage. Just white text on a black background. January 17th. Underneath it, a red button. View files. The files were anonymized. No names, no slander. Just numbers, receipts, signatures, and vendor records. All visible. All verifiable. All impossible to explain. I didn't make it public. I generated a QR code and printed it onto a folded card. Taped the card beneath my banquet seat. Labeled it, "If found, please deliver to Grant Wallace." I sent Claire a text the night before. Me. "It's all in motion." Her. "You okay?" Me. "I will be." Her. "Leave nothing behind." Banquet day. I arrived early. Gray tie, pressed suit, shined shoes. I took my seat at table 9 again. Same corner, same table as last year. The woman next to me had been hired 3 months ago. She leaned over and whispered, "Are you getting an award tonight?" I smiled. Something like that. On the stage, I watched them rehearse the AV transition. Grant stood at the podium reading from cue cards. Devin adjusted the lighting behind him. Maya stood nearby with an iPad checking the seating chart. All 3 of them had built their future by standing on mine. At 8:16 p.m., Devin passed me a folded note. I opened it. Inside, "You're being recognized tonight. 3rd segment. Act surprised." I folded it again and slipped it into my jacket. Didn't react. My watch ticked. My pulse didn't change. One last knot. I stepped away from my table and approached the legal counsel's assistant. His name was Marcus, young, overworked, always trying to prove he belonged in rooms above his pay grade. I smiled politely and said, "Hey, I've got a backup flash drive for the ops presentation, just in case Devin's version glitches." He nodded, grateful. Took it without looking. That flash drive was labeled OP's Summary V3.PPTX. Inside it was a full archive of the transactions, with a single Excel tab titled Ghost Approvals Timestamp Analysis. If it opened, it would open directly to that tab. Then I sat, and I waited. They dimmed the lights at 8:37. Grant took the stage. He spoke about transformation, modern thinking, future-ready teams, said the word legacy 3 times. Each time it felt like an obituary. Then he smiled, looked toward table 9 and said, "There's one person here tonight who's been with us longer than most of our systems." Laughter. He waved me up. I stood slowly, straightened my suit, walked toward the light. The room was warm. I felt nothing. He shook my hand. The crowd clapped politely. Then he said it. "And tonight, we'd like to thank Ethan Rourke for his service and formally announce that his role will be sunset as part of our transformation initiative." Polite applause again. Quieter this time. No sadness. No outrage. Just that awkward hum of a room trying to decide how to react. I smiled, took the mic, let the silence sit. Then I said, "Appreciate that, Grant. Before I go, let me tell a quick story. Just a short one. About January 17th, his expression didn't change, but Devin stiffened behind him. Legal looked up from their wine. The back half of the room went quiet. I continued. That night, a reimbursement was filed. $12,580. Vendor, get it quick. Time, 12:02 a.m. The approval signature was mine. Problem is I was asleep. And that vendor, registered to someone who works in Silver Lake. Last name, Wallace. I turned to legal's table. Should be interesting when that flash drive opens. I stepped away from the mic. No rant, no accusations, just facts. As I walked back to my table, I watched Marcus plug in the drive. He paused, scrolled, stopped, and looked up, slowly. Someone stood at the back of the room. A man in a dark suit holding a phone. He was from the state auditor's office. I'd invited him myself. The applause didn't come until I reached the door. But by then I wasn't listening. The silence lasted 6 seconds. Longer than most people realize. That's how long it took before anyone moved. After I stepped off stage, I didn't go back to my table. I walked to the far side of the room, leaned against the wall near the exit, and waited. Didn't touch my drink, didn't smile, didn't blink. Just watched. Marcus plugged in the flash drive. I saw it from across the room. The way his eyes stopped. The way his jaw tilted, then locked. His fingers hovered above the keyboard for 3 seconds, then he looked up and turned to legal. He whispered something, then passed the laptop over. One chair scooted back from the legal table, then another. The corporate attorney, Justin, I think, looked at the screen, blinked, scrolled, then turned completely pale. He looked toward Grant, still on stage, who was clearly expecting applause or a transition slide. He didn't get either. The projector screen behind him went black. A new slide popped up. January 17th, Audit Flag Records, white background. Red type, not mine. They opened the file. People started whispering, louder than whispering. Clusters of heads turned toward the legal table. A couple execs checked their phones. A few just stared at the stage. Grant kept smiling like he hadn't seen the fire catch yet. Then Devin stepped up and whispered in his ear. Grant's face didn't change, but he stopped smiling. I watched him glance across the room. His eyes found mine. He opened his mouth, didn't speak, just stood there with one hand on the mic and the other at his side like he didn't know which one to drop first. Then the auditor stood up, dark suit, gray tie. He was seated near the catering entrance. I'd reserved the seat. He held up a badge, not dramatic, not flashing, just enough to be seen. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The room froze. HR's head of compliance, Marcia, tried to stand, then sat back down when she saw the screen refresh. New tab, new title, ghost approvals, IP and device log summary, 14 entries, 6 devices, 2 usernames, 1 mine, the rest Devin's. Grant stepped forward again, grabbed the mic, voice flat now. Let's take a brief intermission. He didn't finish the sentence. Legal counsel placed a hand on his arm and shook his head, very slightly, very deliberately. Grant froze mid-breath. Then came the calls. Phones started buzzing across the room. Table 2, procurement lead. Table 5, CFO's assistant. Even the event coordinator pulled out her phone and started reading. Whatever was on the site was spreading fast. The QR code under my chair had done its job. I'd taped 3 others to the bar menu, the dessert tray, and the check-in podium. By now, half the senior team had access to every document, every falsified PO, every forged timestamp, every vendor linked to Devin's cousin's dummy company, and none of it came from me. It was just there, quiet, clinical, irrefutable. One VP stood up and walked out. Another followed. The CFO looked like he was choking on air. Someone near the back whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "This is real. It's all real." And still, I didn't speak. Grant stepped away from the podium, walked down the steps, and made a beeline toward the legal table. Devin didn't follow him. Devin was still staring at the screen, frozen like a man watching a truck hit his house from the sidewalk. A hand touched my arm. It was Marcus. He looked up at me like he was afraid. "Mr. Rourke," he said. What should I do? I looked at him, then looked past him. At Grant, at the auditor, at Devon. I said, nothing. Let them talk. The CEO called 5 minutes later. He wasn't in the room. He was supposed to fly in but canceled last minute due to a family thing. His call went straight to Grant's phone, then to legal's, then to mine. I let it ring. The HR director followed me out into the hallway. She was shaking, said something about internal review and employee grievances, and if you felt like your role was targeted. I held up a hand. Don't spin it, I said. This wasn't retaliation. She blinked. What was it then? I adjusted my tie. Just good documentation. I walked past her, out the glass doors, down the concrete steps, toward the edge of the parking lot where the air was colder, quieter. My wife was waiting in the car. She didn't ask what happened, just looked at me and said, "Did they listen?" I opened the door, sat down, said, "They heard everything." We drove home in silence. The flash drives were gone. The files were out. Nothing left to say. The next morning, Hexridge Global issued a statement. Internal discrepancies have been identified during an operations audit. Certain employees have been placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. Grant Wallace was not mentioned by name. Devon's LinkedIn went offline. The QR code site was disabled by noon, but it was too late. 2 days later, I got a call from the board. They asked if I would consult during the transition, said they valued my transparency. I told them I'd think about it, then hung up. I went for a walk, first one I'd taken during a weekday in 4 years. No meetings, no approvals, no inbox, just sky and silence. I never said his name again, not in interviews, not in conversation, not even when the board called to tell me he was gone. They wanted a quote for the internal newsletter. I declined. The company released another statement a week later. Following a comprehensive investigation, multiple departures have taken place as Hexridge Global continues its commitment to ethical leadership and operational transparency. No apology, no names, just clean, silent cuts, like they were trimming dead branches. Devon vanished from everything: LinkedIn, Slack, company drive. His employee ID was revoked. His email auto-replied, "No longer with the company." The Get IT quick shell was dissolved within 72 hours. The site redirected to an empty parking page. No archive. But I'd already saved it all. They offered me my job back. Not the same title. Higher. Director of Integrity Operations. Sounded like a marketing apology wearing a suit. I said no. The board asked if I would stay on as a consultant. Help us rebuild, they said. I told them I'd send my rate card. They haven't called since. I didn't want revenge. I wanted quiet, and I got it. Claire and I went away for the weekend. No phones, no emails, no traffic. Just a cabin near the lake, a dusty record player, and a bottle of wine we'd been saving since 2018. She asked after a long stretch of silence, "Do you feel better now?" I didn't answer right away. Eventually I said, "I feel finished. I check the news sometimes. Hexridge hasn't recovered." The CFO resigned quietly 2 months after the audit. 3 mid-level execs followed. A new interim CEO was appointed from a private equity firm that specializes in cleanups. I know what that means. Marcus, the assistant from legal, sent me an email, said, "Thank you. What you did helped more people than you'll ever know." I never replied. I got a call from Maya, the girl who took my desk. She apologized, said she didn't know what was happening until it was too late. I told her it wasn't her fault. It wasn't. She asked if she should quit. I said, "That's up to you." She stayed. Good. Someone has to keep the lights on. The Echo folder is still in my desk drawer, still labeled, still organized. I haven't opened it since the night of the banquet, but I haven't thrown it away either. You don't burn the blueprint just because the house is built. Some nights, I sit out on the porch with a glass of whiskey and watch the yard go dark. It used to be the time I'd answer emails, fix server crashes, cover someone else's failure. Now I just watch the wind move through the trees. Nothing else moves, and that's fine. I'm not angry. I'm not proud. I'm just not there anymore. They called it downsizing. I called it subtraction. One day I was the man they depended on. The next day, I was the liability they wanted to erase. They thought I'd go quietly. I did, but not before showing them what quiet really meant. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.